All right, guys, so today we're going to start talking through how the cell cycle and cancer are really connected. You guys will end up doing a research project on this, and the slides aren't super detailed, so I'm going to give you some additional information that you can use, so make sure you're checking Google Classroom. So mitosis is when we are replicating cells, and we said that our cells are replicating all the time for growth and repair, and they are constantly in our body in different phases of mitosis and interphase, and depending on the cell, they're going to replicate faster or slower. So how do they know when to divide and when not to divide? And then what happens if this is going to fail and their cells just don't know when to stop? So when it comes to regulation of the cell cycle, I really like this little chart because it shows you how long the cell is in interphase, and you can see all the different mitosis phases there as well. But we have the cell cycle controlled by a chemical control system, and it starts and stops all the events in the cell cycle. So proteins are going to be playing a key role. Remember, our cell loves to make proteins. And the regulation can either be external, so we have a signal that comes from outside the cell. So we might get a signal from hormones or different nutrients that we have to do some more division to help process or regulate something that's going on. Or we can have internal regulation, which are signals that are coming from within the cell's own nucleus. So the DNA is saying, all right, it's time for us to go through mitosis. So within the cell cycle, there are different checkpoints, and these checkpoints are going to be like a critical stop and go signal that makes sure that our cell cycle is acting the way it should, that all of the different stages are happening the way they should, and we have all the pieces that we need to make successful cells. So you'll see we have a checkpoint in the G1 phase, and that's still when the cell is like just kind of doing its thing. It's not really ready to split. It's not thinking about it. It's just growing and making proteins. So we're making sure that the cell is working on its own right there. Then by the end of the G2 phase, we have another checkpoint, and that's making sure that before we go into prophase, we have all of the DNA that we need to split into two successful cells. Then within mitosis, you have another phase or another checkpoint that's going to make sure that everything is going smoothly and the cell is going to be able to split the way it needs to. And most of the time, we aren't like actively dividing the cell. So there's only these few checkpoints that we need to work on throughout the whole process. We've talked about apoptosis, however you want to say it. This is when our lysosomes do programmed cell death. And this happens when we have internal or external signals that are activating those genes to produce the enzymes that tell the lysosomes, all right, do your job. And we might see this during webbed fingers and toes during development. And so what that is those cells may have died before they are able to completely split, and so you end up with the extra webbing. Now, when it comes to cancer is just uncontrolled cell division. So we have those checkpoints, and for some reason, they're not regulating themselves. So the cell cycle is breaking down, and these cells are dividing much more often than healthy cells do. So something is wrong within these cells, but they're still dividing, and then they're dividing rapidly. And that's how we get tumors to form, because these cells are just building on top of each other. And the tumor itself is just the clump of cells that are dividing uncontrollably. So we have a couple different types of tumors. You have benign tumors, that's when we just have abnormal cells that are going to all stay like in one chunk together. And those can usually be pretty harmless and easily removed because all the cells are in one spot, so we can control what we're grabbing and where we're getting all of the cancer cells out of. However, a malignant tumor are cancer cells that are breaking away from the main tumor, and they're moving to other parts of the body. And when they do that, they'll settle somewhere, but they're still dividing uncontrollably, so they're causing more tumors. And when they spread from one organ to another, that's called metastasizing. And there's a few different basic causes of cancer. We have biological factors. So these are just things like inherently within your DNA. As you get older, sometimes our cells have a harder time regulating themselves. They might be wearing down, they're tired, and so they might lose that regulation. Then inherited genetic mutations. So cancer can be passed down through your genes. And then also your skin type can make you more susceptible to damage from things like the sun. Your lifestyle choices. So the different diets that you have, what you're eating, and how it's helping to maintain healthy cells. Physical activity, making sure, again, your body is healthy enough to keep the energy for the cells to know when they need to stop regulating. And then exposure to UV radiation, which is either the sun or tanning beds and that sort of thing. We also have viruses and other infections that can cause cancer. The most generally recognized one is HPV. That's actually a virus that can cause cervical cancer in women. And then also exposure to carcinogens, which are cancer-causing agents. So these are things that we know interfere with our DNA and mutate them to cause these issues that cause cancer cells. And so something like that is like smoking. So that's the end of the slides on cancer. It's a really quick rundown, but I am going to be providing you with more information. There's going to be a TED Ed video shared in the Google Classroom that I would like you to take notes on as well. And then you'll be receiving your research project information on Monday. So you'll be researching a specific cancer. And we're going to be going through all the different things and requirements for that. So again, if you have any questions, your guys' Google Meet is at 2:00 every day. All right. Talk to you later. Maybe if I can stop it. Where do I stop it? Stop.